Hello, my name is Carl Surrey and this is a video tutorial for two Facebook groups, Fans of Serif Software and the Affinity Designer and Photo group. In this Affinity Photo tutorial I want to look at disintegrating an image like I have done here with this picture I got from Pixabay.com of a baseball player. Now I know disintegrating an image tutorials are not new, there's quite a few of them about, and I just want to discuss and look at some of them. Now this one here, and they're all very good, and I do suggest you watch them, and I will be adding links to all the three that I'm going to mention, because they do things slightly differently and you may prefer to do it that way. This first one by Affinity Revolution of this clock image here is basically like you have no background to the image, and he uses selection tools in the process. And this next one again, which is by XYZ Tutorials, does it slightly differently, but he still uses selection tools and you end up with no background. And this last one, which is by Affinity Jack, which is it's in German, but you've got English subtitles here. Again, it's done slightly differently to the other two, and you do have a sort of background going on. And so, like I said, I'll suggest that you watch all three of them, and they are very good. Now, the last site I just want to have a look at is the scatter brushes that I'm going to use in this tutorial. You can use some of the ones that come with Affinity Photo, but I wanted the one that scattered the particles a bit better. So I'm getting this one from DeviantArt website, and it's just called the Scatter Brush Set, and it gives you 5 fairly large scatter brushes. And I will add a link to this site as well. And then all you've got to do is click on this download button up here. It will download the file, and then you just have to import it into your brushes in Affinity Photo. So that's a look at the website's concerned. So why is mine slightly different? Well, this is an adaptation of a Photoshop tutorial which I had on one of my magazine CDs, and in that you keep the original background of the image and you don't use any selection tools, so I'm not going to have to faff around going around the image or whatever or using selection brushes to keep the image in place. But the beauty of this is the fact that you can see through the particles, and even like in the particles on the areas where you've taken away, and still see the original background behind, sort of. So that is what I'm going to try and do. So I'm just going to sort of close down a lot of these things that I don't need anymore, just to save a bit of memory. I'm going to be back in a little while. So once you have opened your image, be it this one from Pixabay or your own, or wherever you get your images from, the first thing you need to do is to duplicate this image. You can do this in a number of ways. You can sort of come to the layers menu and come down to duplicate, or you can just press Ctrl and J, or you can right click on the actual background over here and select duplicate from this menu. So you've got various ways that you can do this. So I'm going to duplicate this twice, and then I'm going to remove the tick from that layer and from that layer, so they are no longer visible as such, and click and highlight on the very bottom layer, which is the original background layer. Now what we're going to do here, you can do this in either the clone tool, or clone brush tool I should say, which is this one here, and clone in part of the images, or what is good in Affinity Photo is the Inpainting brush tool, which is what I'm going to use. You just click and select that, and I'm just going to, in my hardness is quite low. I'll raise this up again. And what we're going to do is we're going to use this tool to remove the man from the image, and then hopefully that will replace it with the background. If I just go over this man's arm for a second, I'll show you what I mean. Probably best to do this in like smaller stages like this, because the bigger the effect that you use, it takes a bit longer for the inpainting brush to do its job. But this is where we're using it doesn't have to be a perfect background. It's just the fact that when we use these scatter brushes to remove parts of the person or whatever object that you're using this on, it will pretty much replicate what is in the background. So for example, like this blue hoarding here, if there's what looks like a blue hoarding behind when we punch holes through the image, then you'd be hard pressed to know that that the person or object was ever there. Like I said, it doesn't have to be a perfect job. So that's pretty much it. So if you had little holes in the next layer, you won't even know that there was a bit missing from the image. So that's good enough. You can't see the man anymore. So what I'm going to do now is highlight the next layer, put a tick in that to make it the active layer. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to add a layer mask to this image, and to do that all you need to do is to click on this square here with a black dot in the middle, and just click on that, and it will add a white layer mask to this layer. Now the white layer mask will let everything show through, so when we paint black onto it, the black will hide certain areas. So this is what we're going to do with the scatter brush. So you can then come to your brushes. Now you can use the ones that come with Affinity Photo, which I believe is spray paints, textures. As you can see, they're sort of all scattered. It's a case of trial and error, see which one that you like, or you can find your own on the internet and download them, and I'm just going to use these ones which I talked about earlier and downloaded. So as you can see, that this is what it would look like. Let me just select the brush tool first of all, and I can increase the size and lower the size using the square bracket keys on the keyboard. You just make sure that black is selected. Yes, it is. So hopefully you can see that underneath the brush there, it's sort of, it'll break up the image of this gentleman here. So it looks like, this effect is all the particles are coming away from this gentleman, and because of the layer below that has sort of the background pretty much similar to what it was in the original, it shows through, and you wouldn't know that there is that much of a difference. I don't want to break it up too much. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to highlight the top layer and make that active by putting the tick back in this, and what I'm going to do next is change to the Liquify Persona, which is just this icon next to the photo persona. You click onto that and it will transfer that layer into the Liquify Persona. Let me just reduce this brush size a second. Now the first thing I want to do, what I'll do is I'll get rid of this mesh. I'll just untick that box so we can see it better. First thing I'm going to do, and you don't have to do this, but I'm going to do this, I'm going to use the freeze tool, and I'm just going to freeze areas of this which I don't want to alter their position, so the pixels will stay the same. So I'm just going to protect the sort of right hand side of the legs mainly, and the ground area here. I don't want to soften too much, if any of the ground, the brown dirt area at least, to be affected. So this painting over this area will just protect those areas. I'll just do a bit at the front of that glove, and I think this will do pretty much where I want it. So once I'm happy with the areas I'm going to freeze, I'm going to come to the push forward tool, and I'm just going to click and drag this area out, and as you see here, it will keep the hand intact. It's probably pulling away part of the background. Let me just press Ctrl and Z a couple of times, but basically it will protect those areas from being moved. Once I've started this from stretching this out, I can increase the size of the brush a bit and make the effect more dramatic. How far you pull out your particular image will depend on the effect that you are after. I'm not going to go too mad. Admittedly, in the Photoshop tutorial, which I sort of adapted here, he pulled the image that he did, the whole width of the image, both left and right, but it worked with that particular image. I'm not certain it would work with this one, so I will leave it at that. You sort of get the idea. Now once you're happy, you just click on the apply button, and this will bring you back to the image, and as you can see, it looks pretty horrible. So what we're going to do is we're going to add another layer mask, but this time we're going to add a black layer mask. Now a black layer mask will hide everything, as opposed to like the white one, which I explained earlier, will show everything and you paint black on it to hide areas. If you add a black layer mask, you paint white on it just to bring back certain areas. So to get a layer mask in black, you can do it either way, two ways. You can click on the add layer mask button, and once it adds a white layer mask, you can then press Ctrl and I to invert it to make it black. Or, and I'm not certain how you do this on a Mac, but on a PC, if you hold down the Alt key when you click on the layer mask icon, it adds a black layer mask. So now all we need to do is to paint white onto this image. So we just need to, onto this layer mask, As you can see, that is the layer that is highlighted. So I'm going to come to this and make sure that white is the color selected, and maybe pick a different brush. Come to the brush tool, and I will just increase the size, and then I'm just going to paint, make sure it's gone back to black. Sometimes once you select the brush, it automatically goes back to black, so I've got to come back and make sure that it is set on white. Right, so now I can keep altering the size of the brush, pick different brushes, and then just click around on this layer mask to bring back certain areas that you want to have the scatter effect on. And if, like this area here, I don't particularly like that bit so much, I'll come back to black and I will go over that and break that up a bit and make it more scattered. So swapping between black and white brushes, you can add more of the scatter effect or reduce it. So I'm not overly happy with it, but I'm going to leave that where it is because you get the idea. So all you're doing is using layer masks and a brush set in either black or white, and you're sort of keeping a background image intact, so it looks, when you look through either this area here or the area where the person is, it looks like there is background behind no matter what area you're looking at, which I think is quite an unusual effect and I've not seen in any other tutorial. So hopefully you understand what I'm trying to say. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.